Good evening and welcome to UP News, your show for citizen-driven politics. Today our guest is David Sirota. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sure. And today we're going to be talking about the Mountain West region and the upcoming Democratic Convention. And we're your source for citizen-driven news, UP News, www.ultimatepolitics.net. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to Ultimate Politics. This is Saturday on 15:10 a.m. I'm your host, Wade Nars. There's been a lot going on this week, and we're discussing the news and politics of the day. Today our guest is columnist and reporter David Sirota, who's just become a new resident of the Mile High City. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
David, for our fans out there in radio and internet world, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what you see coming up in the next year for the coming convention.
Well, thank you for having me. I just moved to Denver because my wife is going to social work school down at the University of Denver. We moved from Montana, where I had been working for the Democratic governor there. Actually, he wasn't the governor when I worked for him. He was a candidate running for governor up in Montana as a Democrat, which is hasn't lately been a Democratic state. And I basically worked for his campaign. And then I wrote a book called Hostile Takeover. I hope everybody who's listening to this goes out and buys at least 10 copies.
15 copies.
15 copies. It's about political corruption. And now here in Denver, I'm working on my second book. I'll be launching a weekly nationally syndicated newspaper column in the next couple months to replace, although nobody can replace, Molly Ivins. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been on the front lines, I think, at least in Montana, on the efforts to make this greater Rocky Mountain West region more democratic. And there's certainly a lot of optimism, a lot of reason to think that we can turn it completely democratic. But it's certainly a fight. This has been ground zero for the Republican Revolution for at least the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, when I first moved here in 2000, I saw what was going on with the religious right, as well as kind of the collusion between Republicans and corporate policy. Mm-hmm. In 2002, when it was completely red in the state, I was telling some friends back east, I was saying, this state is a microcosm for the country. And in 2004, when both houses switched and the governor switched and everything, not the governor, but Salazar. We got Salazar. I said, watch out, because I think Colorado is going to be an example of what's going to happen, I was saying, in the next 6-7 years, not 2. But as you mentioned, Montana's now got a good candidate, as I was reading on Colorado polls, who might be a good candidate for Senate, I believe. No,
well, what we have is we've got, up in Montana, there's definitely good candidates for the House. There are good candidates for the statewide elected offices, but what happened in Montana was very similar to what happened here. In fact, arguably it was even more dramatic. The state went, in the last 4 years, a Republican legislature became a Democratic legislature, although now it's a split legislature. The governor is Democratic. Both senators are now Democratic. 4 out of 5 statewide constitutional offices are Democratic. So this has been an amazing comeback for the Democrats. And I think people need to remember that. People think that this region's Republican. Sort of, I think some people think it's always been Republican. It certainly hasn't been. Montana, for years and years and years, its longtime senator was Mike Mansfield, the Democratic leader. This region has produced great progressive populist leaders like Cecil Andrus, the governor of Idaho, former governor of Idaho, Frank Church. So what I think we're seeing is a move back to that Democratic dominance, and I think it's because the Democrats out here, or many of them, not all of them, have sort of reclaimed the populist mantle for themselves. And by that I mean they have, the right for a long time out here has claimed the populist mantle on social issues, sort of railing on coastal elites, et cetera, et cetera. I think the Democratic populists out here who've been successful have taken up the populist mantle on economic issues. You know, saying that, you know, big oil and gas companies shouldn't be able to kick us around.
Ranchers' rights, farmers' rights.
Exactly.
And I was reading in your blog on the Colorado Polls website, and also on your email alert, land and private property, or what was it called again?
Land politics.
Land
that's what I called it. And what that really is there's a whole set of issues out there that are important to people, in particular out here, that split apart the traditional Republican, really unholy coalition. The Republican coalition for a long time out here has been this weird coalition between big business and conservative citizens who many of them are hunters, outdoorsmen. They like their property rights, they like their privacy rights. And the issue is that land politics tend to put these two constituencies at odds with each other.
Right.
When the issue of split estates, when you own surface rights to your property and you don't own the mineral rights.
So that a company can come in and just drill on your land with your land rights having no value.
Exactly. So there you see the potentially rural constituent at odds with the big oil company that wants to come in and drill basically through their property and ruin the value of their property. There's a similar issue with the issue of with natural resource access, public lands, stream access. You know, many very, very wealthy private landowners, sort of the Ted Turners, the big guys. They don't necessarily want the public to be able to have access to, let's say, streams or rivers and that kind of thing going through their property. And by the way, I didn't mean to pick on Ted Turner. I don't know where he particularly is on this issue, but there are a lot of large, wealthy landowners who don't want the public to have access to you know, natural resources, and so that puts, strangely enough, that wedges the Republican wealthy landowners, super wealthy landowners, not your typical landowners, that wedges them apart from Republican, conservative hunters, fishermen, et cetera, et cetera. And so Democrats out here, I think, have learned and are learning how to use these issues for their advantage.